to FBA or to FBM? That is the question. FBA rates are continuing to increase year over year. Many sellers are asking the question, why shouldn't I just use Fulfill by Merchant? It costs me less, it's less headache. In today's episode, we're going to break down the pros and cons of each fulfillment method, including the mythological Seller Fulfilled Prime. I'm Jason Boyce, founder and CEO of Avenue 7 Media and host of the Day 2 podcast. With me today is my friend Shannon and I, colleague at Avenue 7 Media. Shannon, what is cooking?
You know what? It's Atlanta. It's February and it's like 80 degrees outside. I had to turn on the air conditioning today. So global warming, we'll blame it. Cold weather, tornadoes, storms, hot weather, blame it on global warming. I totally get it. No, the weather's just all crazy right now. So I'm sweating here in my home office studio, but I'll kick on the AC when this is over and kick back and have a lemonade. So nice.
Well, I'm excited. The painters are at the new house now in Portland, and we're going to hopefully move in at some point in the next week or two, so I can finally escape our Airbnb where I've been recording from with bad lighting, as you can see.
Check Nomad off your list. Yeah, done.
It's been fun. It's been real. But let's get to the topic at hand today, Shannon. I'm hearing this more and more. FBA or FBM. When FBA first launched, and remember, James Thompson, our good friend, James Thompson, was the first account manager for FBA. He called me when I was a big seller and said, Jason, I got a new thing for you. You have got to do this. It's called Amazon. It's called Fulfillment by Amazon, FBA. You send the inventory to us. We will store it, pick it, pack it, and deliver it to your shopper all within 2 days or less. And I was like, James, get out of here. I don't want to give more stuff to Amazon. I'm already too dependent on them already for revenue. I don't want to do this. And he goes, Jason, stop right there. But what you get when you send your inventory into our warehouse and our delivery network is delivering it is you get the Prime badge. And let me tell you this, Jason, you'll see a 30% increase in your revenue with the Prime badge versus an FBM listing that does not have the Prime badge. I said, James, send me the address. You'll have inventory next week. And it was kind of a no-brainer, right? And so The idea that people would be at this stage in 2023, Shannon, debating whether to do FBA versus FBM is a little bit of a head scratcher to me. But if you look at two big fee increases last year, a surcharge, which they're going to continue into 2023, this stupid, 35-cent holiday surcharge per order, all these fees that keep going one direction up, has got people going, wait a minute, am I better off just doing this out of my own warehouse? So what say you, Shannon?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. And it's a question that a lot of new sellers ask. So new sellers who are entering the platform, new brands who are launching. And so what we tell them is, look, if your product is eligible for FBA, if it's eligible for Fulfillment by Amazon, you have to do it, right? It's not a question of if, it's not a question of should. You have to do it. It's essential. And there's two sort of statistics that I want to throw out. And I've actually pushed some of my colleagues and contacts at Amazon for this, because I think that this sort of disclosure of information would actually help sellers. I said, what percentage of customers filter by free 2-day shipping? Now, I've got some old statistics, so I'm going to recall those because as far as I know, they're still valid, but you've got 265 million Prime subscribers. And from what I've heard, approximately 80% of Prime subscribers filter by free 2-day shipping or prefer FBA Prime. If you have different statistics, I want to hear them, but just that number alone is so key that just the massive amount of US households like ourselves that love free 2-day shipping, that watch Amazon Prime videos, listen to Amazon Music and all that great stuff. The challenge is when we prefer FBA and Prime members spend 3 to 4 times more than non-Prime members. That is a segment of the market that you simply can't ignore.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. It's crazy not to take advantage of FBA. I mean that with love, sellers. I should go back and say, back when I was a seller, there were a lot of our product line, a lot of big sellers that were not FBA eligible, so we had to do FBM. And it was incumbent on us to set up 3 different warehouses. And why did we do that? Because it could be delivered faster. Faster delivery has been proven again and again. It works. It increases, I don't know what the exact statistics are, but I saw a write-up one time that showed a 30% increase if it was 2-day shipping and almost a 75% increase in conversion rates and sales if you did a next day delivery. And so we were always focused in today's day and age on e-commerce, you have to deliver fast. And look, there's these big bulky items that they're not FBA-able. In fact, that's actually one of the very few use cases I think where it makes sense if you sell washing machines or something like that and you have the ability to get a vendor central account and sell 1P, you should do it because it could allow you to drop ship with the Prime badge from your own location for Amazon through Vendor Central. But in the most part, if your product, to your point, is FBA eligible and you're not in FBA with a Prime badge and you don't have a seller fulfilled Prime account because it's closed, you can't get one now, then you're losing. You're losing to your competitor who has the Prime badge. It's an absolute must have.
The percentage of customers, Prime customers who filtered by free 2-day shipping, I don't know if there's specific data, but Amazon has come out and said, look, if you use FBA, your sales are going to go up by 5x. And that's for a handful of reasons. One, if you're doing merchant fulfilled and I'm a Prime member and I click that little button at the top of desktop or that little switch, that little toggle at the top of my app, your listing doesn't even show up in my result. I never even see it. It doesn't matter if it's advertised or whatever. It doesn't even show up. It's overnight not visible. And so just from that initial standpoint, you got to use FBA. But beyond that, Amazon I think they prioritize their fulfillment methods. So you're going to increase your organic rank. Your product's going to rank higher. The click-through rate is going to be higher for Prime and non-Prime members. And the conversion rate is going to be higher. So you get these 3 points of entry where at any point, if you don't have FBA, you're getting a drop off, right? Decreased ranking, decreased click-through, decreased conversion, or not showing up in search results at all. So yeah, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. There's times when you can't, and we can kind of talk about that next. But if you're FBA eligible, you have to do it. And you've got to figure out pricing and advertising and cost of goods and everything that makes sense for that, but you still got to do it.
I have a lot of complaints about FBA and the service, and more recently, the fee increases that they're just sort of dumping onto sellers. But, we had this podcast with Tyler Jeffcoat, and he came on, and we had to talk about gross margin. And when you look at the gross margin on your Amazon sales, FBA goes above the gross margin line. So it's sales minus cost of goods minus FBA. It's a seller fee. And they put in marketing in there and then your referral fee, and then you get a gross margin. But if you compare that FBA fee to what it costs you to run your .com fulfillment, which must go below that gross margin line, right? You got sales minus cost of goods, maybe you got returns and some promotions in there to do a net revenue calculation, but your warehouse and your operations, whether it be payroll or supplies, all that stuff goes below the line. Your gross margin may look much larger on your .com, but you're actually better off on your net margin because you just haven't on your .com calculated your total cost of delivery and fee. So it's still a really good game.
Great.
I complain a lot, but it's still a very good game, and you've got to do it. And that Prime badge is absolutely powerful. And it's funny, Shannon, I read a story last night about social media, about Facebook trying to set up a membership like program of their own. And
I read that last night too.
I mean, Amazon cut the mold on this, made the mold on how to create membership dues and fees and provide this best in class opportunity. And if you're not an FBA, you're not playing that game. Now, back in the day, I was a beta in the Seller Fulfilled Prime program. And let me tell you something, it is really hard to stay eligible to do Seller Fulfilled Prime, even more so now than when they first launched it. You have to deliver out, you have to have your product to the customer's door in 2 days or less. And if you're not 99% accurate, they're going to pull your ability to do Seller Fulfilled Prime. One of the interesting things about it is we did everything right. Our warehouse would pick, pack, and get it out the door onto a FedEx truck, right? And then the FedEx truck would be full. The FedEx driver would come by, pick up the trailer, set it in front of the FedEx depot, and they wouldn't unload it that day. They'd unload it the next day. And all of a sudden, we had 565 orders that were no longer, that were past due and weren't going to be delivered on time. So we actually had to build technology to text everyone whenever the FedEx truck didn't get unloaded. So Seller Fulfilled Prime is very, very hard, but it's the best of both worlds if you can do it you've got to have inventory placed strategically across 3 parts of the country. And for us, that was Salt Lake City, Utah. With FedEx, you could cover the entire Western states in 2 days. It was Columbus, Ohio. You get most of the Northeast and parts of the Midwest. And then we were also in Atlanta to get Florida and parts of Texas in 2 days. And so you can do that with 3PLs now. You can place that inventory, but you've got to have really good processes. You've got to have really good service level agreements with your providers if it's not your own warehouse, and make sure that they don't mess that up. But here's the problem, Shannon. Amazon doesn't allow, they're not taking on any new seller fulfilled Prime folks. Why?
I'll mention them a couple of times. They're one of my favorite clients, and they applied for seller fulfilled Prime. We did it back like 3 years ago, and they were just on the wait list. And come to find out that probably sometime last year, they get a notice that their seller fulfilled Prime was suspended. They didn't know if they got it. Amazon never even notified them that they had it. All of a sudden, next thing they knew, they're suspended from it because somebody did some sort of, seller fulfilled Prime order, and they took it away from them. But they were on that wait list for 3 years. And so it is a little bit of that mythological unicorn. And even if you sort of try to get on the list now, Amazon sort of saying no. And it makes sense. The hundreds of millions of dollars Amazon has invested in their own 3PL warehouses. They're like, look, even if you can do it, we want our spaces filled up. But, essentially for anyone who's not familiar with seller fulfilled Prime, it basically means you fulfill it, but Amazon still gives you that Prime badge because you're agreeing to fulfill within the same criteria that Amazon does.
Yeah, right.
We know that Amazon doesn't always fulfill 2 days, even when they say they do. So,
yeah, right.
There's a little bit of margin there. Amazon doesn't penalize themselves when they miss the mark. They
Never.
penalize when you do.
Yes.
But that's seller fulfilled Prime, and as of right now, a little bit of a mythological unicorn.
Yeah, it's impossible to get one if you don't have it. There's a whole market for sellers today who are looking to buy companies that maybe aren't doing much in business, but they were grandfathered in with the seller fulfilled Prime program so they could get it, which I think is also fascinating. But seller fulfilled Prime would be great. And there's no reason for Amazon not to reopen it. For them to say that no one could meet the standard, there's no reason to close it down to everyone. I have to go back to another previous episode, the bill S2992, the Amy Klobuchar, Senator Amy Klobuchar and Senator Grassley bill. In that bill would require Amazon to open up SFP or allow other third-party service providers to be able to provide Prime service. Now, Andy Jassy's gone on television or in interviews or on the internet and said, this will break Prime. Disagree. I totally disagree. The reason why there isn't a ton of money being invested in, companies to come in and invest in being able to deliver on that 2-day Prime delivery date is because they're being beholden to Amazon. They could invest hundreds of millions of dollars, and then have Amazon pull the plug out. If there was a law that required Amazon to open it up, there would be a ton of investment that would come in here, and then sellers would have choices to go to another provider of FBA Prime 2-day or less or 1-day delivery because they wouldn't only be beholden to Amazon. So I had to get in my, Shannon, I had to get a job into Andy.
No, you're absolutely right. It opens up some competition. And, I've had clients that talked to me and said, well, my 3PL is SFP, seller fulfilled Prime eligible. And I said, yeah, but you're not. And that's the key difference is, the seller has to be given that access by Amazon, even though the 3PL, they're seller fulfilled Prime eligible and they do it for all of their other clients. It doesn't make sense. There's again, some gatekeeping that's happening there that is preventing sellers from offering a valuable service. And, I want to highlight, something that happened during the pandemic, which was when everybody had to, go on lockdown and close their doors, and, online ordering spiked through the roof from everything from toothpaste to toilet paper. Amazon couldn't keep up with it.
They turned off. They couldn't send inventory.
Yeah. They all of a sudden said, if you've got a merchant fulfilled offer on your listing, that's going to win it. You go fulfill it. We're over capacity. We don't have the ability. And so again, it's this aspect of there are times when it's convenient for Amazon to say, okay, sellers, we need you to fulfill your own inventory. And we need you to do it quickly. You don't get the benefits that we're giving our other sellers, but again, it's a little bit of a challenge. What people want are options.
Yeah.
And
that's right.
And certainly that fast shipping is key. Again, I had a client conversation last week. they were able to get into sort of a program that they could offer expedited shipping, even though nobody took them up on the offer of the expedited shipping. Just having it available, increased their sales by $1,000 a day.
Wow.
Jason, $1,000 a day, even though nobody took advantage of it. It's like offering a coupon that nobody clips,
Sure,
but everybody wants it because it's a coupon.
right.
And so fast shipping absolutely moves the needle. But, again, what makes a system great and prevents it from breaking is when you're not reliant on just one thing, one system, one source, one tool, one provider. You've got to have options.
Well, that's where you need competition. And when you get a monopoly that comes in there and muscles everybody out, they can dictate and make everyone take those price increases. And everyone complains, but where else are they going to go? Got no place else to go right now. And so, great point. Well, look, FBA versus FBM versus the unicorn SFP. If you've got SFP, do whatever it takes to keep it. If you have a product that's FBA eligible, you've got to absolutely use it to get that Prime badge. It's a key component that drives the ranking algorithm, that drives the flywheel to greater and greater sales growth. And if you got an eligible product, your competitors sure do. So you got to use it. You got to do it. There are some challenges with FBA for sure. Sometimes they'll lose a shipment, right?
Sometimes.
I think Malia and James and our team are really good at getting those refunds back whenever that happens. And then, our friends over at Gatita and places like Seller Locker can do that. But, you can't rely on Amazon FBA for everything, especially if you're in the LTL world. And again, Shannon, if I don't have a lot of regrets about my selling career, but if I could go back and do one thing differently, I probably would have kept our Vendor Central account for the pool tables and the ping pong tables and all that, and done the Vendor Central thing, because nobody had better LTL shipping rates outbound.
Yeah.
Would have probably saved some money on shipping costs. We would have lost some control for sure, but we would have been able to continue to ship it FBM and got that. Ultimately, they didn't have it in the beginning, but ultimately we would have got the Prime badge. And by the way, the Prime badge for an LTL freight item, it's not 2 days, it's actually 4 days, because that's just a whole different ball game.
Yeah,
what other
sure.
challenges do you see in terms of FBA?
Well, I mean, you got hazmat issues. So obviously there are times when there's hazmat restrictions. You do have issues where Amazon will sometimes break open products and bundles that you shouldn't break apart. We talked about, in our last episode, we talked about variations in multi-packs. Well, I've had FBA open the multi-packs and sell them individually, and all of a sudden you got this huge mess on your hands, and, Amazon will lose stuff and then find it later. Jason, one of the worst ones was about a year and a half ago. We were closing down an account. The company, the brand was closing down. We asked Amazon to initially destroy everything, but before that happened, they lost a huge shipment. We're talking about LTL, a whole shipment. They lost it. 2 days later, that inventory showed up on eBay for sale, which was just a little suspect. And then eventually, I think they found some of it. They reimbursed us for some of it, but it took months of being out of stock. And then eventually we asked Amazon to destroy all the inventory, and then it all just showed back up on Amazon from resellers. I mean, it's like, so there's just a complete lack of control. And so one of the things that I want to mention, though, is, we talk about FBA. There are situations where you have to use FBM. For example, if your product is frozen, I worked with a lot of frozen food brands. You got to ship overnight and the cold packs and stuff. You can't do FBA for that. You got to do FBM. In some cases, you mentioned LTL, it's too large, or the FBA economics just don't make sense at all. It's like to ship it into FBA and then pay their pick and pack fees, just easier to ship it directly. But there is a best of both worlds that I want to kind of throw out there, because I think a lot of people are confused by this. They don't understand it. But, if you've got a meltable product, or, and you're having to switch between FBA in the winter and then, merchant fulfilled in the summer, there's a ability to do what's called dual fulfillment, where you have the same ASIN and you've got an FBA offer and a fulfilled by merchant offer. Different SKUs, but you offer free shipping on merchant fulfilled. And what it does is it acts as a backup, essentially. If you ship a bunch of inventory in FBA and Amazon loses it or can't find it, or you sell out faster than you thought you were, that FBM offer can come up and win the listing in the buy box, and it allows your sales velocity to continue. We've always talked about that. You've got to stay present. You got to stay in stock. So there's just certain, nuances of the platform. It's all these nuances of the platform and how you go about it and how you do it well. You hear about people trying to switch ASINs over and then they're out of stock for 3 weeks and then switch them back. And it's just wonky. There's ways to do this, but you've got to understand the strategy and you've got to understand how to navigate Amazon's complex system so that you can win regardless of what happens at FBA, regardless of what happens at Amazon, regardless of what changes with the algorithm. You got to be able to play the whole game.
Yeah. And like just one more complaint until I take us out here, Shannon. I mentioned to you that we did SFP for 4-foot air hockey tables and foosball tables, and we would have the Prime badge. Just for giggles, we would often send the product into Amazon FBA. It was FBA eligible. And we would also have at the same time the listing with SFP. Guess which one won the buy box every time? 10 times out of 10, it was the FBA one. So here was another example of Amazon preferencing his old warehouse over the SFP, which was, again, kind of frustrating. That's why I'm really rooting for this bill 2992. President Biden said in his State of the Union address earlier in the year that he's coming for big tech. He's coming to bust up antitrust and to call for more fair play. For me, I think this bill goes a long way, and it would help to enter in more competition, which is better for sellers. We'll see, Shannon. And just recapping, if you have the option to do SFP, jump all over it and do whatever it takes to keep it. If not, which is likely the case, and you have the option to do FBA or FBM, always do FBA. But to Shannon's point, a little bit of a hybrid strategy, especially when Amazon has its peaks and valleys in terms of lead times to get product from your warehouse into its warehouse, to be able to have both listings available and that you can perform on. Just remember, if your listing does switch to FBM, know it, check it daily, because if you don't, if you have a late shipment or a string of late shipments, you could lose your ability to do FBM from Seller Central. So great stuff, Shannon. Thank you. Thanks for joining us. I think this is another value add for our viewers and listeners. If you're ready to start growing and protecting your brand on Amazon with a team of experienced Amazon operators, you can visit us at day2podcast.com. That's day2podcast.com. Lastly, if you know anyone else who would gain value from this podcast, please share it with them. Thank you for listening and happy selling.